There we go.
Here we go. Here we go. Okay, so welcome everybody. Thank you for giving up your sunny Thursday afternoon. This is a showing webinar about showcraft and preparation for going to shows. Now, feel free to ask any questions. If you want to ask a question, rather than talking over everybody, if somebody could just put up their hand, and then we'll come to you to ask your question. Oh, is that all right? So, who am I? Well, my name is Nigel Murfitt. I'm now a funeral director. I commentate at shows up and down the country, and I judge heavy horses of all breeds, although I'm affiliated only to the Suffolk Horse Society at this time. I lived on the Cole Ambrose estate as a child for many years, and that's one of the founding studs of the Shire Horse Society. And I began showing with shires at 12 years old in 1977. My involvement with Suffolks was started in the 1990s with a man called Raymond Rolfe, and he had Suffolks that he kept next to the Milton Hall Speedway Stadium. My dad used to plat his horses for him, and Raymond wasn't very experienced in showing, and so I got sent with Raymond to help him show, usually mares and foals, actually. So let's go on to the next panel, please. Why do we show? One reason is because we enjoy it. We like to compete, we like to improve ourselves and our horses, and we like to have pride in our achievements. Showing is a great social occasion. There can't be a better feeling than when walking out of a big show ring with a red rosette or red, white and blue rosette. It's such a good feeling to have, but we also have to remember it's not about the rosette. It's about doing the best we can with the horses we have. It's about having pride in what you do. You might not have the wherewithal to have every new gadget or the best bloodlines, but you're putting yourself and your animal on show to the public. And hopefully after today, you can put some of my tips into place to help you improve your showing techniques. They are by no means definitive, and as most things, you will never stop learning. I learn all the time. It takes bravery, heart, and nerves to show horses. It's a performance, and you need the adrenaline rush to shine, but you need to be able to control that rush, and because it's easy to transmit your nervousness to your horse. They're not machines, and very few of them go the same every show. If you find yourself one of those that go every time the same, then you consider yourself very lucky. Go to the next panel, please. So let's go to showing etiquette. When you go to a show, everybody has had to get up early in the morning. It can be a long day. It's amazing the effect a smiling face can have on a judge on a wet, grey morning. Always remember, in most cases, judges are giving their time and expertise freely. I love people who just say, good morning, good afternoon. And a pet hate of mine, and I know some other judges too, is exhibitors who offer you too much information about their horse. We've been asked to judge because the organisers trust our ability. They will probably know that your yearling or 2-year-old was either a late foal or had a bad start. By you telling them that, shows them that you are worried that your horse is below par. Most judges would like to see the potential in young stock, not a finished animal. That's not to say skimp on your feed, and hope to get away with it, but keep them well fed, but not overfed. I've already seen that light horse judges are starting to see the appeal of heavies and will be looking for fit, not fat. Don't expect feedback from every judge. If you ask for any guidance, please accept the judge's opinion. You can judge whether you think it applies or not when you get home. I've been asked for my opinion several times, and when I've given it, I've had my advice argued against because the exhibitor didn't want to hear what I was saying. Some judges can use nothing as preserving a person's feeling. I don't go out of my way to destroy feelings or boost egos. If I'm asked for feedback, I'll be honest, and if I feel I can help, I'll offer that feedback for you. Stewards particularly are the foot soldiers of the showing world. They're very often overlooked. They are the ones who actually are in charge of the class. They give their time freely and often are the ones given the least amount of consideration. Shows wouldn't run without them. Commentators are also a great ally of the showing world, but only if you give them the correct information. If you have a horse bred in Wales or another European country, you know how to pronounce the prefix of your animal, and you can give us a heads up how to say it. I don't speak Welsh and my French is very poor. So give that information out. It's all about sharing information. So a commentator will know how to announce your horse's name, because there's nothing worse than a commentator who stumbles over prefixes of a foreign language. Can we go on to... the other thing is, when you go into show ring, always be considerate to the people who you are in the ring with. Give horses in front and behind you room to shine. If your horse is having a bad behaviour day, consider leaving the class rather than becoming the object of someone's displeasure in the box park. Now, I'm not saying that if your horse acts up, you should always take it out, but just give somebody a bit of room so that you can calm yours down and then set off on a new pace. So these are basically just showing etiquette things that you should remember when you're in front of a judge. If we go to the next panel, please. There we are. Now, always ask for direction. There is always someone to help you, to give advice and guidance. At shows, always ask the stewards about running times or what the judge would like. Commentators often know, but are not always kept up to date with the running of classes and championship or grand parades. And I know this from experience. I commentate at shows quite a lot, and people will always come to the commentary point and say, what time is the next class? When I'm in here, when I'm in there? I don't always know that information. The stewards are the people employed by the show to run their classes. So they're always a good point of call. Always be kind to stewards. Remember, they've been up as long as you have. They've been on their feet a long time. And good manners go a long way with stewards. Now, it's very easy to get distracted on things happening outside the ring, especially if it's a big class, you've stood there for a long time. Always keep your eye on your horses and keep it standing up, because you never know when the judge is going to cast his eye in your direction. So concentrate on the task that you've got in hand by showing your horse. You need to be watching all the time, watching where the judge is, watching, making sure that he's not looking back at you when your horse is standing in that horrible three-legged mode. Now, you're only going to be in the ring for a short time. Switch off your mobile phones. If the call was important, they will check back or leave a message. If you have an emergency happen at home, then give your phone to a trusted friend or family member. It's very rude to use mobile phones in the show ring. I have seen people do it, which is why I put it on here. You're only in there a short time, so always remember to switch your phones off. Now, before we go on to the next section, is there any questions that anybody might like to ask about those things? No? No questions? Hello, Sally.
Hi.
Sally's here. Tony, do you have any questions?
No, I'm fine. Thanks, Nigel.
Is everybody all right? Very good. Okay, so we're going to the next section we have here, which is equine behaviour. Now, we are showing horses that are used to being a natural animal, part of a herd, and we can use some of their natural behaviour to help us in the show ring. So remember that horses are naturally a herd animal. If you keep your horses as part of a herd, observe their behaviour at home. If it is the dominant one you're showing, so the one who's the head of the herd always wants to get to the gate first, to the feed room, then that horse probably will want to go in the ring first. And it will respond much better if it feels comfortable in its place in the herd of the ring. It might not know the other horses in the ring, but it's used to being out the front. If you can't be the first one in the ring, then hang back and create some space between you and the horse in front, because the horses that are the lead horses of a herd do not want to be close up behind something else. In the same way, some horses like to be followers. Some horses don't like to be out the front. They are always at the back. Remember that. So when you go into a ring, you might want to take the horse in last so it can follow something round. All these are little tips that you might pick up during along the way. It's about knowing your horse and getting used to your horse's own nature. When you think about some of these things, they do make sense, but in the heat of battle, they can be forgotten. So try and learn how the horse naturally moves, and also try to learn how the horse naturally carries its head. The head of the horse is a very important thing to maintain the balance of his movement. I see so many times people who are walking with horses in show rings, and they're pushing their horses up into the air, holding their heads up, because people keep saying, keep his head up, keep his head up. But it's not the head you want to keep up. You want to keep his head at his natural carrying level. Now, if you look at the picture that I've got on the screen there, can we show the screen, please, Steph?
Yeah, it's showing.
Is it showing? Yeah. That horse, I never had to poke its head up because it always kept its head where it was. And you'll find that the horse will have a natural carriage for its head. If you start pushing its head about, you're upsetting its balance. And by upsetting its balance, you're throwing its legs, and it then will not go straight for you. And it will look like you are showing a lame horse sometimes. It will dip its back and it tries to recapture the balance, but it doesn't quite work. So always try and remember your horses know how to walk and how to stand. You don't have to interfere with them. Let them do that. Now, you need to build up your confidence at home and trust that your horse will show itself naturally. Give your horse room to maneuver. I see so many cases where they are pulled about and create an outline. They will do it themselves if you let them do it with confidence, and you have to give them the confidence to let them. You also need to listen to the rhythm of your horses that are walking and trotting speed. Try and practice this so when you're in the ring, you are showing the horse at its natural speed, so it covers the ground on a good regular stride. It's less likely to be headstrong or break into a jog instead of walking. Always be mindful of the proximity of strange mares and stallions. And this is where we come to the sex part of this. Sometimes you're in a collecting ring, you might be going to the grand parade, there might be stallions, there might be mares and foals. You might have a colt who thinks he's quiet around your mares at home, but he might be different. In his head, he thinks he might make a conquest. So always be careful with stallions. I know young handlers don't show stallions very much, but this is something for you to think of in the future. Give yourself plenty of room. Mares with foals particularly don't like to have lots of other horses around them. They're protective of their foals. So give them that space. Don't ram yourself tightly into collecting rings. And it's very common, especially at the big county shows, that you're in a collecting ring and the stewards are saying, move over, move over. You need to keep your space. Your horse needs to feel safe. And if your horse is safe, then you are safe. Okay, can we go to the next screen, please? Now about ringcraft. Always give yourself sufficient time to prepare your horse and arrive ahead of the class time. Nothing upsets your horse more than being rushed and you being ill-tempered. It also gives you time to pick your spot if you need to get in first. Also, give yourself time to be prepared. I like to get to a judging ring at least 15 minutes before the class is due to enter, because you never know if the previous class is going to finish early. Roger Clark once told me, when you think you're ready, go and have another look. And this is very true. Build time into your schedule so that maybe you can run a duster over, double check your flights and your tail ribbons. Just make sure that everything is ready for the judge. Showing is about perfection, or as near to it as we can get. And it's all about catching the judge's eye. So the moment you walk into the ring, you want the judge to look at your horse and continue to look at it. Give yourself plenty of room so that you can settle your horse, and then you can make any necessary final preparations. Give yourself time. It's all about time preparation. Never feel rushed. Horses do not want to be bunched together. And also, when you're showing in front of the judge, you want him to see your horse and not the others that are crowded into you. Only go into a ring when you are summoned by the stewards. They will call you in when they want you. Usually the judge is there to judge. He doesn't control the ring. So let the stewards do their work. Now that we're in the ring, what do? We're going to walk in a circle. Now, this is the first opportunity the judge will have to see your horse. And what direction are you going to travel? With Suffolks, as with light horses, you travel in a clockwise direction. Now, if you go into a class that has mixed breed horses, you might have to go the other way around. In a mixed breed class, if the judge doesn't tell the steward what way he wants you to go round, it will be the first one in that sets that motion. So be prepared to go a different way to the way you might want to be. But usually with a Suffolk, you go clockwise around the ring. So you are on the outside and your horse is in the middle between you and the judge. Bearing in mind your horse's length of stride, go in a nice walk and give yourself sufficient space to continue traveling without getting too close to the horse in front, so you don't have to keep stopping. If you can leave enough space between you and the next one, then it gives you more space to actually walk out. And if you can get a nice flowing walk going with your horse, it's much more beneficial than having to keep stopping and starting. Also, your horse will be much happier because he is being allowed to walk on and not having to stop and start all the time. Never ever, if you get close to the horse in front, overtake it unless you are invited to by the exhibitor who is holding the horse before you. Very often, I've seen this happen where people just go past because they think, I want to get out of the way of this one. If the horse in front stops, then you need to stop unless you're asked to come past. If you can, and you need to make more room, then spread the ring so you actually take a wider circle, which will then give you more room, especially in the corners. When the judge is looking at your horse, make sure you are giving him the best view. Judges may view this section from various positions, so keep walking on until you're told to stop. I usually watch every horse come in from the middle of the ring until I've seen them all. Then I will view them from the corner of the ring. And that way I can see them coming towards me and then going away from me from one position. It saves me dotting about the class, and it also saves time because I'm not walking about the ring when I could be looking at horses that are moving. On a hot, dry day, particularly like today, I wouldn't want to keep horses walking on forever. So that's why I try to do the forward and going away movement in the same way. If you notice you're walking towards a judge, then try and keep the horse in a straight line. He wants to see your horse can move straight and true. Similarly, as you walk away from him, try and maintain that straight line as you walk away. So if you're walking away from the judge, try and pick a fence post or something like that, so you keep that horse walking in a straight line going away from the judge. It's very important. The judges might have had a long day. They don't want to have to keep zigzagging across, trying to watch where your horse is going, because basically, if we can't see what the horse is doing, we can't judge it for you. And that's the aim of the game. Now, once the judge has seen all the movement, he will inspect each animal individually, standing still. Now, some judges will do this before the initial lineup. Some will base their initial line on the movement they have seen already and inspect them in line. So they might watch them all go round and then pull them in before they've actually examined them for any faults or blemishes. I always inspect them before I place them, so that I'm continually filtering the excellence and the faults in my mind. Whichever system is used, you must need to stand your horse up for the judge in such a way that the judge can get all the way around it. You don't want to be hampered by other horses being too close, because the judge doesn't want to squeeze in between the rear ends of two horses. He might get kicked. And he needs room to stand back and take in the whole view of your horse. Now, I normally do this, if you like, webinar clinic with horses in an arena. So I'm used to having horses in front of me. So it's a little bit difficult to describe some of these things, doing it on this sort of situation. But I hope it's making sense to you. Now, when you're at home, practice standing the horse up on 4 legs square. Make sure it's standing on all 4 feet when you're in the ring all the time when you're standing still, and not resting a hind foot. Horses are notorious for going to sleep in the middle of a ring, especially when it's a busy show. They've been out a long time. They might have been away from home a couple of times. They might not have slept as well as they normally would, and they do get tired. So you need to keep an eye on your horse all the time and just make sure that he's standing on all 4 feet all the time when the judge is looking. Because when the judge is looking at one horse, you never know when he's going to look back at you. And it's the moment he'll look back at you and you've not paid attention that he'll notice that you're standing on 1 leg. And again, the horse should look alert when he's standing up for the judge. Don't be tempted to push his head up, because as we said before, the more you push their heads up, it dips their backs, it gives them a horrible top line, and it's not a great look. So try and get that natural look of a horse. They don't need to be overbent. You don't want to pull their chins in, make their necks go curved, but you don't want those horrible dip backs either. Just let it stand in its natural position, and do this at home. It is quite boring at home to do this. You stand around with horses, but it gives them chance to get used to what you want to do. It never does a horse any harm to tie him up at home. So many people have people to hold their horses, to do everything with, but it's actually quite a good discipline if you can actually tie them up in a box or a stable for an hour or so, just to stand and do nothing. Because when they're at shows, they have to be in a stable sometimes, or beside the lorry, and they normally have to be tied up, because if you've got to hold that horse all day, it can make it a very long, tedious day for you. So try and get them into being used to being tied up, so that you can actually groom them, you can wash them, you can even plait them. I used to have 2 show geldings that I showed on my own, and they were always tied up to wash and to plait before I took them out. And you do that at home and they get used to it. If you have a nervous horse, ask your friends to act as a judge at home, to run their hands over it. If possible, people that the horse might know. Now, this is about looking after the judges and stewards, because sometimes people do bring horses to the show ring that haven't had experience of strangers handling them. And the worst thing that could possibly happen is for a judge to run his hands down maybe the back leg of your horse, and then your horse tries to kick him. So try and get your horses used to going to shows at home. All this work can be done at home. Obviously, it's in a controlled environment, in a safe environment, but do try and do these things before you get to shows. If you know your horse has a tendency to lift a leg when you touch it, so for example, sometimes when horses are shod, when the farrier touches its leg, it will instantly lift it up. Just warn the judge that it might do that, because the judge will then be aware that he needs to touch the horse in a certain way. So he doesn't make it nervous or make him think that he needs him to do something else. So just warn your horse if you think the horse might lift its leg at him. Judges are experienced horsemen and women, and they won't purposefully antagonize a fretful or nervous horse, but we do appreciate being warned if there might be a hoof whizzing past their heads. Some horses may have had an unfortunate experience in their life, and every time a stranger comes to them, they might think they're going to get that again. The better your horse stands for inspection, the better the view the judge will have of it, And if we can't get near it, we can't judge it. And avoid trying to engage the judge in lengthy conversation. We will ask you if we require information. Once every horse is examined, they will be asked to walk around again and then be pulled into an initial lineup. Now, it's the steward who should call you in for the initial lineups. You don't need to make eye contact with the judge. The initial lineup is just that. So the steward will pull you in. Just keep an eye on the judge to make sure that he's not watching you, but you don't actually have to make direct eye contact with him. Some judges will pull an initial lineup in as they come. Others, including me, will do a preliminary placing. So I will place my chosen first to third, for example, but there's always room for change, and I might change them before the end of the class. The important thing to remember at this point is to make sure your horse is positioned squarely in the lineup, on all 4 feet, with his head being carried at his natural alert state. And this is a good thing to practice a lot at home, so the horse becomes accustomed to not needing to fidget. Although this is an initial lineup, it could also be the final one. So make sure your horse is well behaved and standing well throughout the class, as judges will often look back to double check. Many classes are won and lost by horses not standing up properly. So it's worth the time to take this practice and do it at home. So now we're going to go into the individual show. Some people call it the stand show. Some people will just say, give us the show. They're not expecting jazz hands or lycra leg kicking. They're looking for you to show how your horse moves at its best advantage. Now, the way we do this is the horse will walk away from the judge and walk back, will trot away from the judge and then trot back. Now, that sounds quite easy, doesn't it? But you'll be surprised the number of people that I see in the show ring, and they're not all youngsters. They're people who have been doing it for a long time, who do not seem to be able to walk in a straight line. But this stand show is your chance to show the judge what your horse can really do. So it's your chance to shine. Unless you're standing in first place, always approach the judge by going behind the rest of the lineup. So you'll have all the horses lined up in a row. If you're second in the line, you would approach the judge from behind the first horse and then go in front of the judge that way. Never go in the front of the row of the horses towards the judge. Always go from the back. And always be ready. The steward should indicate when you are to go before the judge, but sometimes they don't. You need to be before the judge to be ready to go in as the last horse is finishing. So what I would normally do, if the horse in front of you is trotting back to the judge, that is when I would move from being in the lineup and move to being close to the judge to then start my show. But obviously, be well-mannered enough to give the horse coming out room to get out. You don't want your horses clashing at the top end of the ring. So get to the top end of the ring next to the judge, but not close enough that you're too close to the other horses. And always, when it's your turn, you need to walk in as straight a line as you can. You're walking away from the judge. So I would normally suggest you pick a fence pole, a flag pole, something that you can keep your eye on and move towards that pole in as straight a manner as you can. I normally would walk about 20 steps, roughly. You might want to go a bit further. You might want to go not quite so far. If your horse is walking a little bit unsettled at the beginning, go a little bit further to let him settle down. Once you've done your 20 or so steps, stop and turn. Now you turn by pushing your horse's head away from you. Don't pull it towards you. You need to push him away from you. And then once you've turned him, you then line him up towards the judge to go back to him or her. Make sure that when you go back to the judge, your eye line is directly with the judge. So then your horse will walk straight towards him. You walk towards the judge When you get there, again, you stop. Always stop. At the end of these runs, don't keep running, don't keep walking and then turn on the walk. Always stop and then turn, because then it sets the horse up so that you can then set him off again on a straight line on the right leg. Once you've done the walking, then you do the same thing at the trot. Now with the trot, again, pick your post, trot down the line for about 20 or so steps. And 20 or so steps doesn't sound a lot, but it's surprising how far you can get with a horse in that space. Stop at the bottom and make sure you stop before you turn again. So many people do, they run down and they turn it around automatically. By doing that, the horse is unbalanced, it's running on the turn, it's not a pleasant sight. So always stop, but then see where the judge is, set your eye again for where the judge is standing, but when you trot back to the judge, I like the horse to actually go past me. So instead of standing in front of the judge and stopping, I like to see the horse come past me a few steps so I can see him actually go past. Once you've gone past a few steps, stop and then back your horse back, because the judge will want you to see him come back. And again, the judge may or may not look round the horse after you finish your trotting. So don't just finish your trot and disappear. Once you finish the trot, he might ask you to back up, stand the horse up. He or she might look round him. And I'm saying him all the time because it's just a pronoun I use. I'm not being racist or sexist against anybody else. And he may look around him. And when he's finished looking, he will say, "Thank you very much." At that point, you go back to your place in the line. You go back, going behind the line, not in front of the line of the horses that are standing there. So you never, ever come out of the line or go back into the line from the front. You always come round the back, so your horse is actually facing out the front. You don't have to turn him round to have him facing the right way. When you're back in the line, give yourself plenty of room. When the horses have been in these classes for a lot of time, they are notorious for starting to swivel around. And what you don't want to do is you don't want your horse to bump with another horse and then they start kicking at each other. So always give yourself plenty of room in the line. Stand the horse up properly, and remember, the judge will still be watching you. You're on show the whole time, from the time you go in, from the time you go out, and you've never won the class until the rosette is actually on your head. Now, once the judge has seen all the exhibits, we still have an opportunity to double check our findings. So after we've seen them all move, we might decide that the one at number 2 actually should go to number 3. Or maybe the one at number 3 could go to number 1. We have the opportunity that we can move them around. Now, this is normally done by either asking people to swap places. So if you're going to swap first and second round, you might just ask them to swap. If there are more places to swap round, you might be asked to walk round again. Sometimes, after seeing the horses do their stand show and the judge has looked round them, he might ask them to go round again to have a final look at their movement. We are allowed to do this if we have time in the ring, and the judges don't control the ring, as I said before. We have to be very careful that we don't overrun in the show ring. The shows have very tight timetables. They have other things coming in, especially if we're using things like the main ring. So judging should be a concise effort, but sometimes we do need that extra look to be fair to all of the exhibitors. And if we ask you to go again, it's not because you've done it badly, it's because we might not have seen what we needed to see sufficiently, or just wanted to double check on something again. So if anybody ever says to you, "Could you go again, please?" which sometimes they will, just do it again as best you can, because it might be the judge needs just to have that final look. And it might be the chance for him to then think, well, actually, that horse is better than I thought it was. Whichever scenario takes place in these issues, the steward will be the one to tell you. The judge shouldn't be giving instructions to the exhibitors. It is down to the steward to tell the exhibitors what needs to happen. And again, once you get called in for the final time, it might not be the final time. So again, keep your horse stood up squarely until you have the rosette on its head. Only then is the decision made. And actually, usually, even when the rosettes are handed out, until the judge takes off his hat, the commentator will not announce, or shouldn't announce, that the class is finished, because the judge, until he takes off his hat, could still change his mind. When you're asked to do so, leave the ring at a walk in a clockwise direction. Now, some exhibitors do choose to leave the ring at the trot on the final straight. Only do this if you're in first place, and only do it if you know you can control your horse with the noise of the crowd, because it looks awful when the horse has been given a red rosette to win and then leaves the ring like a box of frogs, jumping all over the place, rearing all over the place. So only ever go out of the ring at a trot, and you will see people do it, but only ever do it if you know you control your horse to the best of your ability, because it's terrible when you've done all that work, you've got the red rosette, and then the horse lets you down, and you just think, like, the audience looking on will think, well, why did he give it that prize now? It isn't that good. So don't spoil it on the way out. Championships vary from show to show and judge to judge. It's usual for all the first and second prize winners to compete in the championship for the champion and reserve. However, some judges or some shows only ask for the first to come in first, and then will bring the second as the reserve to the one who might have won. So, for example, they might have 6 first prize winning horses in. They choose the one they might have for the champion, but the horse that was second to that in its class might be considered for the reserve. So if you are the second place, never just go back to your box. Never think, I'm not in the championship, I was only third, I wasn't second, I was second, I was first, I wasn't second. Always stay around if you are in second place, because there is always the chance that your horse could be better than the other first place horses that the judge has seen that day. So never assume that just because they had the red rosette on them, they're the best horses the judge might have seen. Now, championship classes are normally judged in similar fashion to the original classes, except depending on the class, the judge might decide that he only wants to see them walk out and trot back. He's already seen them go before. He might already know before he comes in which horses he's going to put in the championship position. It just depends on how the horses go a second time. Sometimes he might have chosen his champion already from what he's seen in the morning, but then when it comes in the afternoon, it's been a bit hot, it's been a bit tired, it doesn't show as well as it did in the morning. So he has to change his mind. So always make sure that if you're in a championship class, that your horse is ready to go, prepared again properly, presented properly, and it's as important as the first class you went in first thing in the morning. Does anybody have any questions about showing sort of ring craft or anything of that sort?
No.
Anything I can help you with from what I said? All happy?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, so if we go on to the next part is ring attire. Ring attire, what do we wear? In most cases for all breeds, in hand showing, the following are required. A smart jacket of subdued colour, so tweed, black, brown, navy, grey or green. Trousers or breeches to match. A shirt and a tie. Now I've put here on my list an optional hat. Now, some judges will say that exhibitor isn't wearing a hat. My advice for hats is only wear a hat, one, if it fits you and it's going to stay on your head, because when you're trotting out a horse, there is nothing worse than your hat flying off across the ring. Does the hat actually need to protect you? If you have a horse that rears, for example, you might choose you want to wear a skull cap. Hats are an optional extra. Some of the top flight showmen that we have across all breeds of horse, not just the Suffolk horse, choose not to wear a hat for showing. It isn't an absolute requirement. It can sometimes finish off the look of the exhibitor, but it isn't a necessary thing to have. I would never put somebody down in a class because the exhibitor wasn't wearing a hat. Shirt and tie, certainly yes, but never a hat, because it is a thing that some people like to wear, some people don't like to wear. I used to wear a bowler when I showed, but only because I liked it and I had one that fitted. It used to be a thing that some people wore once upon a time. I just quite liked it and it suited me, so I wore it. In the Suffolk world, people used to wear brown smock coats. They always had a shirt and tie on, but they didn't always have a jacket under the brown smocks. We don't see them worn very often now. Probably John Fleming. I'm trying to think who else I've seen in a brown coat lately. John Fleming is probably the last exponent wearing a brown coat all the time. So we don't see them quite as much as we did. They were traditional, but they do seem to have disappeared. Remember that showing can be a long, sometimes hot, sometimes wet day. So choose your clothing wisely. If you belong to a heavy horse society, so if you belong to the Suffolk Horse Society, then by all means wear their tie. But don't feel you have to wear a society tie for any of the breed societies or any of the local societies. So long as you have a tie that is sensible coloured, that matches everything else you're wearing, a tie will suffice. You also need to wear good fitting boots. You need to wear boots that are going to fit well, that are comfortable and are safe for your feet. Bear in mind that these horses can sometimes weigh a ton. They are very heavy if they stand on your feet. So don't wear a brand new pair of boots to a show that you're going to be in all day. Make sure you've worn them in before you go, because you can be on your feet all day and it can be a very long day. Let's talk about whips. If you choose to carry a whip, be prepared to use it properly, not just carry it as an accessory like a handbag. Never overuse a whip in the ring. The general public are very sensitive to whip use and often take to social media to comment on it. And remember, you and your horse will be wearing an exhibitor's number. It's easy to find names in the show catalogue. There are many people who carry whips at such weird angles, they are no benefit whatsoever. Try and keep your movements, whether walking or running, natural, and always feel the rhythm of your horse. Another thing to remember is to put the correct number on your horse for the correct class. This is important for you to be marked present by the stewards and to ensure that you will receive any prize money or any appearance money that's due to you. Try to make sure the number is showing on the horse's chest and doesn't slide up to one side or the other. And then it's hidden from the commentators or the steward. When the commentators are commentating, if they can't see the number, they can't tell the public about you. So always remember to keep your number on the front of your horse. If you're showing a horse in multiple classes, double check that the number you've been given is the one number you're going to use all day, because sometimes when you're in multiple classes, different numbers are issued. And if you turn up at the class with the wrong number on, then the stewards won't know you're there and they won't mark you as being in the class. Now for ridden classes, the number is normally worn around the waist, facing back, unless it's a bridle number supplied and it goes on the horse's head. But that's for ridden classes, and it changes from show to show. Again, similarly, in a ridden class, you might choose to ride the same horse, but in different classes. Make sure the number you use is the right number for the class so that you don't make these mistakes. It will make it much easier for the judges to look after you. So that's come to the end of my presentation that I had for you today. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. If I can be of any help to you, I'm happy to answer questions. I have done like a handout of all of this talk, and I'm very happy to email you a copy of that. If you'd like to email into Steph or Jess, then they can either email me the emails and I'll send them out on their behalf to save them a bit of work, or I'll just send them a copy. So does anybody have any questions? Sally, do you have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. Can you hear me all right, Nigel?
I can hear you, yeah.
That's great. Now we're ready to start showing our foal. What would be the correct way to show him in the ring? Whether it would be better to let him move forward alongside mum, or whether we should be leading him forward ourselves from the head. My gut feeling is to let him go alongside mum, but I'm not sure. So, yeah.
Okay, showing a foal, you would always, well, I say always, you would usually show him with his mum. You would show him alongside mum, so he would walk he would basically walk the other side. Let me get this right way. How can I explain this? He would walk the side that the handler is walking with the mare, so on the near side. But the mare holder will be basically between mare and foal, if you can. If you can keep the foal away from the mare, so that when the judge judges the foal, the mare isn't in the way, that helps a lot. So if you can sort of practice at home, walking them parallel up and down. Now for turning, when you get, normally with an in-hand mare, of course, you would turn her on to the offside when you turn. When you have a foal, it is acceptable to turn the foal to the near side and bring the mare round the other side, so you're not doing a horrible crisscross in the middle. I see so many people showing mares and foals who do this weird and wonderful, almost like Strictly Come Dancing crossover at the ends of the ring. Judges don't expect that from foals. Okay. So the mare can go round to the near side, the foal can then follow round. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's difficult without having a horse here to show you. But you keep the mare on the outside of the foal all the time. So she's basically his shield as he goes round, if that helps.
Because naturally, the foals sort of will walk alongside the mum naturally anyway. And I sort of think that that's where he might want to put himself if he had a choice. Because that feels like that's his. So I presume that a longer lead rope would be a good idea, so that we could actually be behind the foal if he's up with the handler of the mare. Otherwise you're going to have too many people, aren't you, up at the top, if you know what I mean.
To be honest, Jenny, it all depends on your homework. We used to show foals in a foal halter. But the thing with a foal halter is you want the leader long enough that if he decides to have a little bit of a buck and a kick, he doesn't catch it. And that I've seen that happen more than once. If you can get a foal
this morning,
if you can get a foal to go close to the head, then go close to the head if you can. But if not, you might have to have him on a long lead, and then you can use the whip in the other hand to keep him going. It's about practice at home. I have spent hours and hours and hours with my dad when I was a child walking foals around fields to get foals going. Now, the only thing with foal showing is, in the Suffolk world, normally judges do not expect Suffolk foals to trot in their stand show. If you have a foal that will do it, then that's all well and good. But normally we don't expect foals to trot in their stand shows. But if you're in a mixed breed class, be prepared that the other breed judges might expect you to do it. It's one of those weird.
At least he's keeping him in trot. He'll go into canter if he gets half the chance. He's a bit lively. But I also am not sure how I should present him, really. Whether I should present him completely naturally, or if there's any requirement for any braid or ribbon on him at all.
Okay, what you can do, and there's various ways of doing Suffolk foals tails, you can leave them just naturally. Some people will tie a ribbon around the top of the dock and tie a bow in it.
Okay.
The danger of that is, if it's a fly day, they swish their tails, and by the end of the day, the ribbon's gone. If the hair is long enough, and it depends, of course, on when in the season you show him, because obviously foal hair at the beginning is really curly and like an afro, you can't really plait it. If the foal is long enough, you could put a little bun in the top, and then just put a ribbon around it. Once the foal gets to nearly a yearling, so for example, if you were to show him in the young stock show in September, he might have enough tail you could actually plait it properly.
I think we could probably plait it now, actually. We have had a little go at it.
The problem,
quite a good tail, so.
No, the problem with foals is, and I find this a lot, particularly in the other breeds. Suffolks don't do it quite so much because the Suffolk coat, when they lose their foal coat, the Suffolk coat underneath isn't usually that different to what was on top. But if with foals, I like a foal to look like a foal. I don't like it to look like a little yearling, if you see what I mean. And for example, I've shown at Framlingham show, I've judged at Framlingham show before, and at Fram, people bring foals that may have been born in April, June, May or June, that haven't been born at the beginning of the year. So when they come, they look like foals still, whereas the early born foals tend to look a bit more, they're going towards being a yearling. So it's if you do too much preparation to their manes and tail, never touch their manes. Foals manes never get just brush them out. But if you do too much stuff to the tail, it starts to make the foal look too old. If that makes any sense. So you want to keep it.
Because he's an early foal anyway. Because I mean, he was born early March, so I mean, already he's we've got another month, I think, till his first show. So by then he'll be 4 months old. So he's he's going to look a lot.
He's going looking towards an older foal. So I would be tempted, maybe just put a little bun in the top if you can, and put a ribbon around it. That will be all we need to do. That's fine. That's what we need to do for him.
I just have to hang on to him on the day.
But it's all about, as we know about everything else, all about the preparation at home. And I mean, obviously I see from your Facebook you're doing lots of stuff with him, putting him on the box, taking him for walks and all this sort of thing. You can never do enough with a foal, and the good thing about a foal is if they do these things when they are a foal, it prepares them for later life. They get used to flags, they get used to bands, they get used to tractors, they get used to motorbike display teams. It's all desensitizing work for them, so it's all good stuff to do.
He seems to be he seems to be really good with most things, really, but then of course he's been out and about such a lot already, so I do think it makes a difference. But
it does make a lot of difference.
It does, so fingers crossed. But thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. What about you, Molly? Do you have any questions? Can we unmute Molly, please?
No.
You don't have any questions?
No.
All right. Who else have we got? We've got Deborah somewhere, haven't we? Whoops. Has Deborah got any questions?
No, we're all good. Thank you, Nigel.
You're all good? Okay. Tony, have you got any questions?
No, I haven't got any questions. I'd like to thank you, though, for what you have done for today. It was very good, actually. I did learn a lot about the work at home, really. That was good for me. Especially getting someone to act as a judge and feel round the horse. It's something I never give a thought about, really.
No.
But, that's very helpful.
I mean, when you think about horses, they get used to what they get used to. They're very habitual. And once they get used to doing a thing, they just do it. But meeting strange people, it's like any animal, people who have a dog, it doesn't necessarily take to the next door neighbours or visitors that come. They need to get used to meeting strange people. I used to have a mare who hated being, she hated being handled by women. I don't know what it was, but I could give her to boys and young handlers and she would be perfectly all right. But if a girl had her, she would play up and she seemed to know the difference between the two. I don't know what it was about that, but she just had a thing about being handled by women. And you do get horses that are very much like that. You get horses that are very much easier with women. In fact, I had one horse that I showed that would often go for young handlers a lot better than he would go for me. And I don't know what it is. They get this thing,
don't they?
Yeah.
They know.
But I think for showing is about knowing what your horse's natural behaviour is. And I think it's something we often overlook. Is sometimes we think we just put a lead on and we take them in and they just do what we ask them. But they the horses, when you show horses, they need to have confidence in you. They need to know that you're there with them, you're in control, because any nervousness, any sort of tension that you've got will transfer down that lead to them. And I think it's very important that you do get a bond going with your horse.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah. And as a steward, I also reinforced really. I do it anyway, but keep horses apart in the collecting ring in places like that. That was another thing that, like I say, I do that, but I didn't really think about it, if you know what I mean.
And it's a thing that, particularly with mares, people always keep a sort of, they'll keep stallions out of the way, but with mares and foals, people forget that mares do get very foal proud, particularly if they've been in boxes next to other horses. So it's important to remember that mares have a natural protecting instinct over their foals, and so like that little bit of extra space.
Lovely. Yeah, thanks very much.
All right. Do you have any questions, Steph?
I'm fine, thank you. That was brilliant. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot today as well. Oh,
well, that's good. That's good. So yeah, I mean, if well, Jenny, I've got your. I'm sorry, I call you Jenny. You see,
I know who it is.
Yeah, I keep calling her Jenny. I don't know why. It's something weird. I've got your email address anyway, so I can email it to you.
Yes.
I'll send it to you anyway, Steph, so you've got it on file. And then if Tony wants a copy, or if Molly wants a copy, Deborah wants a copy, then we can.
Yes, please. If I could have one.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
I was interested to know we didn't have to wear a hat.
So other people can look in.
Say that again?
Will this go on our YouTube page so other people can look in if they want to?
Yeah, we will. We'll be putting it up on YouTube.
Okay. So anybody that wants it, you know, they can have it again. I mean, I'm happy to do it again at another time. I mean, obviously, as we said this morning, we chose to do this when it was raining. It was March. It was cold. We'd forgotten it was sunshine in May. But I mean, normally this week is raining, so you'd expect, you know, people would be at home. But there we are. But yeah, but it's something that obviously we can use again.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Deborah. And thank you, Molly, for joining. And enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Stop recording now.